So as we've focused almost entirely on recruiting in the month of July, there have been several teams that have been white hot during the month and able to capitalize on a ton of momentum. One such team being the Oklahoma Sooners doesn't look like they're stopping on capitalizing on the momentum, because last night they got a major win out the state of Florida in four-star defensive lineman, top player in all high school football, coming in at number 101 in the nation per 24/7 Sports, Derrick LeBlanc. Today, we need to break down why this is such a big win, what this means for the Oklahoma Sooners, and what LeBlanc brings to the table. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited that Oklahoma lands the talented defensive lineman? And then let me know whether or not you think they're able to capitalize on even more momentum this weekend. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below, as those interactions may seem small, but they are truly massive to content creators such as myself. As we push towards 15,000 subscribers, I'd love to have you a part of this awesome community. But having said that, let's jump right in, because this is a huge win for the Oklahoma Sooners, a prospect they've wanted for quite some time. Ultimately, they're able to win the battle. And this is a guy that you love to get in. Look, I talk about this consistently. You want the big guys in the trenches, whether that's offensive line or defensive line, because everything starts and ends in the trenches. And especially when you have a defensive line coach that has the cachet of Todd Bates, having him be able to go out and win these battles on the recruiting trail for a very talented defensive lineman such as a Derrick LeBlanc is going to be great for the Oklahoma Sooners, and it's going to be something we have to watch going forward to see what other battles Todd Bates is able to win. Because Todd Bates is one of the best defensive line coaches in the nation, and because of that, he's a name we have to watch any given year in terms of recruiting as to what battles he's going to go into and what battles he's going to come out of victorious. But if we're talking about what Derrick LeBlanc brings to the Oklahoma Sooners, there is a ton to be excited about. Look, this is someone who I could see coming in and making an impact. He's a very talented player, someone that the Florida Gators really pushed hard to try and keep home. Ultimately, it's Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners who've had really serious success in the state of Florida. I've talked about this, how Florida is one of those states that you want to get a pipeline there, and Oklahoma with Brent Venables has been able to establish some sort of pipeline to Florida, and that's very impressive, because when you look at how much talent is in the state of Florida, 57 of the top 300 players in 24/7 Sports Composite located in the state of Florida. You want some presence there. I mean, if we're talking about LeBlanc's game, there's plenty to be excited about. Very physical at the point of attack, explosive defensive lineman who has got tremendous upside. I think when you pair him with Schmitty and Todd Bates, with some time in the system, he is going to be a name to watch. But I absolutely do believe he has the ability to come in and make an impact. Look, whether that's in a rotation capacity or whatever it may be, whenever you pair this type of talent with Todd Bates, with the strength and conditioning coach that Oklahoma was able to bring in this offseason, I think it's very exciting. But what does this mean for Oklahoma's class moving forward? And this moves them to the number 6 class in the nation with 18 prospects in the class. And more than that, Oklahoma has 9 individuals in their recruiting class that rank within the 24/7 Sports Composite top 300 players in the nation. And one thing I alluded to but didn't really go in depth about was when I talked about if Derrick LeBlanc could be a prospect that gives a ripple effect to the Oklahoma Sooners. The reason I bring that to your attention is Oklahoma is set to host an event this weekend, and a name that Oklahoma fans have been watching carefully, such as Hicks, is going to be in attendance per his Twitter. So, with Derrick LeBlanc committing, can this be something we see provide a ripple effect going into this weekend? While we don't have a definite yes going into this weekend, what we can say with confidence is that Oklahoma has been able to capitalize on the momentum they've been given. And that's something else I talk about. You're going to have hype with these new coaches. It's all about how you're able to capitalize on that hype. And Oklahoma has done so as well as any team in the nation. And now with Oklahoma in the top 10 classes, it brings me back to a question that I constantly got, and I really never understood why, which is when so many people thought that with this staff for the Oklahoma Sooners, they would fall off in terms of recruiting and within the Big 12. And I never really understood that, because when we look, Todd Bates was one of the best defensive line coaches in the nation at Clemson. Brent Venables was one of the best defensive coordinators in the nation at Clemson, and they were both able to recruit at an elite level. So whenever you bring those guys over, I already knew that the recruiting would be just fine. They've been in a building where recruiting was done at the highest order, and a lot of those guys that were won for Clemson came on the backs of Brent Venables and Todd Bates. Not all of them. There are several stellar recruiters on that Clemson staff, but you get the point I'm trying to make. They were absolutely a part of the picture. And then when you look even further than just outside of Oklahoma, the Big 12 right now is in a state of chaos. If I ask 5 fans right now who's going to win the Big 12, I may well get multiple different answers. And even in some of our discussions on live streams, you all have seen this, where we'll talk about who's the favorite in the Big 12, and if there's 4 of us, you'll get 4 different answers. And the reason being is the chaos that's within the Big 12. Look, if we look at Oklahoma State, they were a fantastic team last year. They lose their defensive coordinator, and if it was just losing the defensive coordinator, I might still have them a little bit higher on what I think they'll do this season. But it's not just the defensive coordinator. They lose a ton of experience in that secondary to the transfer portal. That's something I think is going to hurt the Cowboys, as the heart of that team last year was the defense. Now you're having to replace a whole lot. When we look at Baylor's coming off of a fantastic year, but now they have a new quarterback. There are some changes they're going to have to make, and it's going to be really interesting to see what Aranda is able to do coming off of a Big 12 championship. But right now, then you look at the Oklahoma Sooners. They lack the continuity in the coaching department, but what we've seen them do this offseason is be able to capitalize off the momentum, and they do have a talented roster that they have at their disposal. So we really have to watch what Oklahoma is able to do, plus the continuity of Jeff Lebby with Dylan Gabriel is something I find to be very, very compelling. You look at the Texas Longhorns, and I must admit, I've said this multiple times, I want Texas to come back. I think it's good for college football if major brands such as Texas, such as USC, such as Miami, regain some life. However, Texas has still got a lot to work through. I get it. Their recruiting class was sensational, and it made a ton of sense from a cohesion standpoint. They needed offensive line. They prioritized offensive line and signed one of, if not the best offensive line class ever, right after Kyle Flood did the exact same thing at Alabama. So that's a hell of an offensive line recruiter. But at the end of the day, you still are trying to get in a new quarterback. And even if, in a wild scenario, it's Hudson Card over Quinn Ewers, even though Hudson Card got some experience last year, it was Casey Thompson. He's now at Nebraska. Now you're going to try and get in a new quarterback who I think is incredibly talented in Quinn Ewers, but he's going to be a first-year starter. You're going to have to work through that as you're trying to also work through your offensive line woes and the defensive woes. So the Big 12 right now is in this really interesting position, and we didn't even talk about Iowa State, who lost so much in terms of percentages of their offense with Breece Hall and Brock Purdy. So when you look at all of this, the Big 12 is a league that I have a ton of interest in this year because there's so much chaos in it, so many sweeping changes, and I really can't wait to see how it all plays out. But at the end of the day, I'm not surprised by what's going on at Oklahoma right now. I haven't been surprised by it. I've maintained that position. I've maintained that position once they started recruiting well, and especially after what they did in the last year's cycle where they had a top 10 recruiting class and a top 10 class in transfer portal acquisitions. So hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. This is a huge pickup that's great for the Oklahoma Sooners, a prospect they've wanted for quite some time, and now they're able to get him in, winning him over the likes of the Florida Gators, and this is a guy that's going to come in and provide a ton of excitement. Can't wait to hear from you. That's it. See ya.